කාරණය ඉදිරිපස ඇල්ලීමෙන් වළකින්න.
මැද්ද රට නගන ජන පවුර.
TV1 රැස් විහිදෙන ජීවිතේ.
Newsfirst, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
And a very good evening to you and a warm welcome to Newsline. Today it's a special edition of Newsline, so we call it Newsline Special. And we're delighted to have on our set a person who has remained elusive for us, although he came here nearly a year ago, which of course we're very grateful for. In all seriousness, this evening we have a very, very special guest who is making a difference right now in our country amidst this sea of turmoil. And he's none other than the leader of the SJB and, of course, the leader of the opposition, Mr. Sajith Premadasa. Very good evening to you, Mr. Premadasa.
Good evening.
It's nice to see you, Mr. Premadasa, and thank you very much for coming on the program.
Sure, it's a pleasure.
It's obviously crisis time here in Sri Lanka, and I was wondering if you, as the leader of the opposition, as the leader of the SJB, whether you have a real workable solution to the present immediate crisis that we're facing.
If one is to make a detailed study regarding the viability, the authenticity of a SJB solution, all I need to tell you is refer to the major questions that were posed by myself as the leader of the opposition and as the leader of the SJB. It's called the 27-2 questions. Right from the inception, right from the beginning.
Beginning of what, Mr. Premadasa?
I'm talking to you about the early days of this administration.
Right.
Roughly sometime in January 2020,
right.
When I assumed this office.
Right.
From day one, we have been sounding the alarm bells.
Right.
For the major problems in the methodology and the techniques that were used by this government, especially in economic management. If you allow me to elaborate on my contention, when you ask whether we have the requisite capability,
well, actually asking you if you have a real solution.
Yes. So if I'm to provide you with the workable solutions and the prescriptions, it's very vital and important that you look at the source of the problem. It's only when you analyze in a very comprehensive manner the source of the problem, the causes, then you will be able to extrapolate information and set yourself a set of guidelines in order to come up with the solution. So I will answer your question in this way. How did we get into this economic crisis? And I think it's valid to call it a catastrophic situation as far as the economy is concerned.
An economic Armageddon?
Of course. I mean, I use the word that we will go through an apocalyptic situation and we will ultimately face an economic Armageddon, most laughed at it, but I think all of the 22 million are now living it, unfortunately.
Right. Okay.
Now, where did we go wrong as a country? At least where did the government go wrong? Right at the inception, within the first 2-3 months of the administration, they gave a humongous tax cut amounting to 600 billion or over. What were the consequences? 600 billion plus tax cut, resulting in a loss of state revenue of 2 to 3% GDP, state income reducing from about approximately 11 to 12 to 9 to 10. This resulted in international rating agencies downgrading our rankings, agencies such as Fitch, Moody's, Standard & Poor. So all these questions were asked. It is in this
It's in this book.
Now,
look, ladies and gentlemen, let's get a clip of this. This it's called 27-2. These are the questions posed by the leader of the opposition, the Honourable Sajith Premadasa MP. And it is, Mr. Premadasa says, and this book will reveal it, these are the questions that he's been asking right from the inception of this government, and when Mr. Premadasa himself was appointed the leader of the opposition. So
if I may carry on with my answer.
Yes, go on.
So with the downgrading of our rankings, what was the result? It basically prohibited Sri Lanka from entering the international capital markets to raise dollar facilities for refinancing one's loans. That meant Sri Lanka resorting to our foreign reserves, which was somewhere around, hovering around 7 billion when we handed over the administration to this present government. And they used those foreign reserves to service debt in terms of debt capital and debt interest. Now, with that, we had a precipitous decline of our foreign reserves, which would have otherwise been spent on fuel, essential food items, medicine, raw material inputs, and so on and so forth. Hence, we have the dollar crisis.
Right.
Now, when you don't have dollars, you cannot purchase fuel, especially at a time when hydropower generation has come to a virtual standstill. When we don't have fuel, we cannot provide power through the fuel generators. The private generators cannot be powered up. We cannot respect our export orders. We lose our export markets and destinations. Hence, we lose dollars. So this is a vicious cycle.
And your solution to reverse it?
One more thing. So I have to elaborate on that first. Then only you will be able to, and the viewers will be able to get a very comprehensive understanding of how the solutions will be implemented.
Equally, I think the public and I would like to have a comprehensive answer to what the immediate solution is.
Yes, but Mr. Shaukat Ali, we have to once again talk about the problem, analyze the problem to explain our policy prescriptions. So we have a dollar shortage. We have an economy running at under capacity. We have a situation of economic, social, political gridlock. Right. And we also have a vicious cycle. No dollars, no fuel, no manufacturing, loss of exports, cannot furnish our debt, reserves inadequate to cover our essentials, food, fuel, medicine, so on and so forth. So, what is the solution? What do you do to create a pause or a full stop to this vicious cycle? two things have to happen. First is we have to approach the international monetary institutions to obtain their facilitation and support to have a moratorium initially, what you might call a debt standstill.
Okay.
All right?
And restructuring?
No, wait, let me finish, please. So that's on the one hand. You gain the confidence of the international community by involving the international monetary institutions in this process. That will accrue several benefits. You can obtain a moratorium in your debt payments. In addition to that, we will have greater confidence being generated in the international arena, and there may be a less of a hesitancy on the part of FDIs, foreign direct investments, to come to Sri Lanka. And we will also get some sort of stability in terms of exchange rates. Now, parallel to going to the international monetary institutions, we have to go through a process of debt restructuring. These have to go hand in hand. To do so, we have to enlist the services of foreign advisors and experts in this area, and legal advisors, financial advisors, which the government is yet to do. I even don't know whether the government is actually requesting the facilitation of the international monetary agencies, because we are all in the dark. We don't know what's happening. So what we would do right now is approach the international monetary institutions and also go for a debt restructuring process. Now, when we talk of going to the international monetary institutions and the agreement that we will arrive at, that will be an agreement which is pro-people, pro-poor, pro-Sri Lankan. It has to be negotiated from a position of strength and character. So we need to have strong national leadership, adequate knowledge of economics. We have to have a good team of experts and personnel, which we do possess. We have an economic troika consisting of Dr. Harsha De Silva, Honorable Iran Vikramaratne, and Honorable Kabir Hashim. Together with myself, we all meet regularly. We discuss, and we have formulated an evidence, substance, information, case studies based approach.
And a consensual agreement, all of you agree?
Of course.
Right.
We all have to agree on one path, and we have agreed on one path. And that is to have an agreement and also a debt restructuring process which will be of minimal detrimental consequence to the people. So it will entail conditionalities which will not be harmful for the economic and social rights of the people. Now, having said that, when we have a moratorium, it will give us a breathing space as far as capital and interest payments on our debt. In addition to that, we will also gain the opportunity of obtaining bridging finance from multilateral institutions such as World Bank, such as Asian Development Bank, and also from bilateral relations, maybe countries such as Japan, Australia, to name a few. We will be able to enlist their support for bridging finance. Bridging finance will ensure that if there are any shocks to the country, that it will have a cushioning effect and ensure that various reforms, structural changes will have minimal impact on the vulnerable groups in our country. So those are the immediate steps. In addition to that, if I may say so, we have to have another approach where we reach out to countries that are oil rich, talk to them, come to an agreement where we are given a breathing space as far as fuel supplies are concerned. And we are very confident from our preliminary talks that we would be able to succeed in that regard. In addition to that, we have to approach countries on a bilateral level and also groups of countries at a multilateral level to obtain grant aid, which is not an easy thing. We have to ensure that we achieve that objective. Moreover, we will have to go ahead with structural reforms. We'll have to ensure that loss-making state-owned enterprises are reformed and changed into profit-making institutions. We will also have to make sure that labor force participation levels of the females in our society is increased, ensure that youth unemployment issue is addressed in a comprehensive manner. So there are a series of steps that have to be taken. Most important, we have to cushion the people in our country from these structural and other reforms.
I grant you, Mr. Premadasa, that's a pretty comprehensive answer to my question for whether you have a real solution, which indeed it appears that you do, and thank you for that. But I want to ask you this. In light of what happened yesterday and what has been happening for the last 30-odd days, where groups of people are protesting silently because of what they claim to be mismanagement of Sri Lanka's economy. This has resulted in fuel shortages, so there's petrol, diesel, kerosene, gas, and various essential food items too. So, Mr. Premadasa, tell me, if this government was to change rapidly, what plan has your party, your alliance, got to cope with these immediate problems of the fuel supply, the gas, and the essential food items, bearing in mind that the government's agriculture policy in terms of the organic fertilizer has been nothing short of a complete and utter disaster?
So I go back to my initial reply. I provided you with the necessary policy prescriptions. To be very short and succinct, we have to address the dollar shortage as the major issue. But in addition to that, there are accompanying changes and transformative steps that we have to take in order to reform the economy. If I may just go back to explain to you the virtues of reaching out to the international monetary institutions. I have here several case studies that our economic group has studied. The case of Ecuador, the case of Ukraine, where those countries have reached out in a preemptive manner to the monetary institutions when they foresaw drastic reductions in their ratings. They foresaw this and they approached, and now they are back to normal levels. Now they have enhanced their foreign reserve levels. They have enhanced their import coverage months. When we questioned Nivad Cabral through our questions from 27-2 with regard to the impact of the reductions in our ratings, or the downgrading, that's a better word, downgrading of our ratings. You know what he said? He said these are conspiracies that are committed by the international community, which is absolute balderdash, absolute rubbish. So that's the answer he gave. And he went on a huge oration of the major shortcomings and weaknesses of the previous administration without addressing the problem. And look at where we are now. Now, as far as protests by the people of the country are concerned, every citizen of the country has fundamental rights. Right to speak, freedom of thought, freedom of expression, the right to demonstrate, the right to go on walks, the right to express your grievances. That right is there. That's a democratic right. That's a political right. Do remember, we do not live in an autocracy. We do not live in an authoritarian system. This is not a dictatorship. This is a democratic country. While saying that, there are certain boundaries which we as citizens should not cross. That is, protests, I believe, should always be non-violent. It should never ever result in damage to public nor private property. Having said that, I believe the vast majority of the people in our country, they are absolutely suffering. They are suffering from the various deficiencies, the various shortcomings, be it diesel, petrol, kerosene, gas, milk powder, rice, dal, sugar, etc., etc. And this government, this incapable, incompetent, corrupt administration has not been able to fulfill the needs, the basic human needs of the people.
The people are on your turf.
Can I just please add one more thing? Let me complete my answer. There is also the suspicion, although I cannot verify because I don't have first-hand knowledge. There's also the suspicion that when various violent acts take place, at times they may be instigated by the administration itself. Now, that is a cause for concern. I don't have evidence as far as the recent incident is concerned, but this suspicion is there. You know, Faraz, there is fear, there is anxiety, there is sadness, there is desperation, loss of hope, complete darkness, absolutely no light at the end of the tunnel. As far as our people's thinkings are concerned, people are desperate. They're desperate for solutions. They're desperate for their basic needs to be fulfilled. And this government is not doing it. They are incapable of doing it. They are inefficient. They are incoherent. They have no vision. They have no approach. They have no strategy. They have no proper international links. They are using a very, very ad hoc, knee-jerk reaction approach to solve the problems. And that would not suffice.
You've got it absolutely spot on about, and you are clearly with the people when you describe everything. But they're also extremely frustrated. And when you've spent a day at work, I don't think it's any fun at all to go home to a lack of electricity and so on. But Mr. Premadasa, very quickly, is it possible that you have a solution which you want to share as a citizen of Sri Lanka with the government of the day and say, look guys, if you do X, but I mean that X is what I'm asking you, if you do X, you can actually solve this immediate problem of fuel supplies or the dollar crisis. But let's look at the film.
Well, I once again want to, without repeating myself, reiterate the steps that I just explained.
So what you're saying is there's no solution tomorrow, day after?
No, those are solutions, instantaneous solutions. When I talk about bridging finance, bridging finance is an instantaneous solution, but there's a problem here. The government has lost credibility.
So there's a trust deficit.
It has lost credibility domestically. It has lost credibility internationally. You see, you have to gain the confidence of the international society in order to ensure that we have a bailout package that is pro-Sri Lanka, that is pro-Sri Lankan, that is social democratic in its perspective. We must have it, and we can have it. Ranasinghe Premadasa persuaded the World Bank to provide subsidy support for the Janasavya program, for the Janasavya Trust Fund. No other leader has been able to persuade the World Bank to provide grants, to provide financial subsidies. He managed to do that. So you have to be strong in character, conversant in your subject, aware of the people's grievances, wants, expectations, declarations, and people's aspirations.
And Mr. Premadasa, Mr. Premadasa.
I have not finished, please. And if you gain the confidence of the international society, then you'll be able to succeed. The problem with this government is it has lost credibility. It has lost trustworthiness. The international society...
I think we are all aware of that.
The international society takes this government for a joke. You think just because we provide the prescriptions to the government that they could succeed. The major actors in the government lack comprehension of the issue. Just look at the number of personnel that were initially appointed to the so-called, what is it, Economic Council or Economic Committee?
National Economic Council.
And when there was a big debate about the suitability of the initial entrance to that committee, then only you had members from the business community, those who have excelled in the business processes, those who have excelled in their entrepreneurial activities, were included, were made part of it.
Talking about...
The chambers were not adequately represented at the inception. So, only when a public debate takes place about the suitability and the qualifications of the initial entrance, then only the government decides, oh, by the way, we should have people with knowledge and experts also in this committee. So initially, the initial action was to stuff the committee with your stooges and cohorts who would dance according to the tune of the president. You cannot run a country like that.
Mr. Premadasa, you must give me, let me ask you this question. What we're talking about really is a lack of leadership, unplanned progress in the economy. It isn't going anywhere, obviously, as the sovereign people understand very well indeed. Talking about leadership, Mr. Premadasa, why would the people believe you?
That is because I think throughout my political career and in recent times as the leader of the alternative government, by that I mean the leader of the SJB and the opposition leadership, I would very, very humbly contend that we have shown the people that there is a third way. Always in our country, it has been our political culture. Throughout our democratic political history, the governments implement what they gain as state revenue from taxpayers' funds, projects, programs, and it's given back to society, calling them development. And invariably, all oppositions have always clamored for power, strategized, organized themselves to come into power through various political strategies and political programs. Never have there been any opposition that has implemented development while being in opposition, worked for the people, added value. Our HUSMA program has provided 46 hospitals with hospital equipment, life-saving equipment, amounting to 126.4 million rupees. We have enhanced the education sector through our Sakfala program. And Mr. Shaukat Ali, for the very first time, the opposition has received foreign aid. Have you ever heard of an opposition receiving foreign aid for development work? We have received. So we have shown and exhibited our capabilities and the capacity to solve problems. The country is crying for solutions. We need problem solvers. We need people who can formulate and articulate a response, a riposte, a reply for the various challenges that we face. The challenge of scarcities, the challenge of retarded growth, the challenge of hyperinflation, the challenge of unemployment, the challenge of budget deficits, the challenge of balance of payments deficits, the challenge of multiple traps. We are in a poverty trap, we are in a debt trap, we are in a growth trap, and this government does not have any comprehensive solution to any one of those issues because this government is purely incompetent.
And therefore the people will trust you.
Well, it's up to the people. I cannot force the people.
No.
I only have the power to persuade. And I shall use my powers of persuasion to provide the alternative roadmap to the people, and it's up to the people to make a very informed decision.
And Mr. Premadasa, who do you blame for the present crisis? Is there any one person, group of people? Is there one person?
First and foremost for us at this juncture, I would like to represent the wish of the people.
Right.
The wish of the people is not us as the alternative government pointing fingers at A, B, C, D as individuals or groups. They want solutions.
Right.
But we all know with this particular administration, the Rajapaksa administration, I call it a kleptocracy. It's a political oligarchy hell-bent on personal enrichment, sacrificing the wishes, needs and wants of the people of our country. There's absolutely no doubt about it. The amassing of wealth, the scams that have taken place, even during COVID, the scam with relative to sugar, the scam related to various other transactions related to testing kits, and so on and so forth. In every aspect, it's personal aggrandizement, personal empowerment that has been the objective of this government. They have not looked at the national interest. They have not looked at the people's interest. They have not looked at issues from the perspective of the people. They have just taken the 6.9 million and the 6.8 million for granted.
I hear what you say. I'm sure the public hear what you say. But, you know, the same sort of things were said in the run-up to the 2015 presidential election about the Rajapaksa's various deals, about the way it was claimed that they had amassed fortunes, obviously outside of the normal system. But when that government was sent home, and the new government came in 2015, and on the back of that, the parliamentary election too, nothing really of any substance happened. All those corruption charges, much of them have been chucked out the window. For God knows what. Maybe there's some various legal reasons. But from a public perspective, you're saying now what we were told in the run-up to the 2015 election.
We would approach the elimination of corruption from a different vantage point. It is not the business of politicians to catch robbers. We have to establish sound institutions with adequate legal institutional teeth, which ensures its independence, which ensures that no politician, whether it's the executive president or the executive prime minister or members of the cabinet, etc., could intervene, could malign the process by scuttling it. We have to have an independent, stand-up bureaucratic infrastructure with an immense amount of legal teeth, which protects its autonomy and its independence to ensure that corruption is eradicated. Not only eradicate corruption, we need to repatriate the dollars lost from the vast amounts of wealth that has been amassed, and we need to repatriate those funds, and that could also be a good source of dollars for the people of our country and for the economy.
And you're really talking about a systemic change then?
Yes, change of the system, change of the bureaucratic infrastructure, and basically strengthening institutions. We have to strengthen the institution because politicians do not have adequate credibility when they come up with various slogans saying they are going to catch robbers and so on and so forth. Just look at the people who were appointed to these committees. Some were there with honest intentions. And what happened? It was dysfunctional. Private arrangements and deals took place. And invariably, you will have politicians come to some sort of compromises, some sort of consensual agreement. I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine. But when you have independent, legally strong institutions, procedures that cannot be fiddled with, that cannot be tinkered with, that cannot be eradicated through a simple majority of the parliament, then you will have a sound infrastructure to attack corruption, to eradicate corruption. That's the path that we will follow as the SJB.
And will you, as the leader of the SJB and a potential future leader of this country, will you compromise on finding out who was responsible for the corruption, who managed to get enrich themselves, and will you compromise on the need to take this matter through the legal system and come to a legal finality on any of these?
I will not compromise with anyone. But I can tell you, I shall be extremely determined to set up the said institutions that I mentioned before, ensure that they are approved through acts of parliament, through legislation, establish procedures and regulations which cannot be interfered with, so that, as I told you before, neither the President, Prime Minister, ministers, nor anyone could interfere with the process of justice, with rule of law, with the administration of justice. It's the system, the institution, the laws, regulations that we have to strengthen. We cannot depend on personalities to go after corruption. That would not suffice. That is a very, very underdeveloped way of attacking this problem, because corruption is a menace. We have to ensure that we have very high rankings in anti-corruption. The potential for FDIs will increase when they perceive Sri Lanka to be a haven of anti-corruption, a haven of non-tolerance, of looting public funds and funds of the treasury. We have to set that example, and let me assure you, the SJB will be the role model to do so.
Sajith Premadasa, thank you very much for that answer. And on the back of that answer, let's go for a quick break, take a peek at this evening's headline news, and return to our interview, Newsline Special, with the leader of Sri Lanka's opposition, Mr. Sajith Premadasa, leader of the SJB. We'll see you on the other side of the break, shall we?
News First, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
Supporting rural education means building a nation's future. And together with the people of Sri Lanka, Gammadda is leading from the front. Development of preschools in Ramba Ava and Isin Basagama, both in rural Anuradhapura. A preschool developed in Attan Kadavala in the North Central Province. Clean drinking water for the children of the Maligattena School in Valimata, Bandaravela. A library for the youngsters at the Kumbuk Oya Rural School between rural Polonnaruwa and Matale. Clean water for school children in Hambegamuwa, Munragala. Classrooms for students at the primary school in Ralapanava, Anuradhapura. The complete development of the Sindati Mata School in Kalpitiya, Puttalam. These are a few examples of Gammadda's action and impact. Thanks to you, the people. Gammadda, by the people, for the people.
News First, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
And welcome back to Newsline Special. This evening we have a very special guest, as the name of the title. The leader of Sri Lanka's opposition, Mr. Sajith Premadasa, leader also of the SJB. Mr. Premadasa, thank you again for being on Newsline, and it's a special program. What's your stance on Sri Lanka's foreign relations, foreign relationship even? We have forever and a day, when it comes to March, you know, it's almost like the Ides of March is upon us. And what on earth is going on? Why is this issue of the national question and this accountability, why is it continuously bugging the side of our foreign policy ever since the war finished? Is there no commitment to bring this, to draw a line underneath this, and so that we can all get on with it?
We should possess an external affairs policy prioritizing our national interest. What has happened is we have prioritized both domestic and external policy based on personal proclivities and tendencies for personal interests. Personal interests have gained primacy over national interest. Just look at our geographical location as a country. We are strategically positioned geographically, and it accrues many an advantage. Why can't we use that advantage to ensure that there is value addition through our external relations? What has happened is that the international community have recognized our advantageous geographical position, and they have structured their own policies to suit their own national interests and exploited the advantages that are accrued to our country. What we should be doing is being done by others. So I think there has to be a recalibration of our external affairs policy. We have to specifically identify our objectives, our tasks, and our path towards achieving it. When you address the issue of human rights and accountability, the members of this present administration, right at the conclusion of the war in 2009, signed up to certain guarantees, certain conditionalities, and you do understand the well-known Latin dictum, pacta sunt servanda, thou shalt abide by your agreements.
Right.
When you sign up to conventions regarding civic and political rights, when you sign up to conventions regarding economic, social, cultural, and other rights, you abide by them. When you sign up to conventions that eradicates genocide, when you sign up to conventions that promote women and child rights, you shall carry out those agreements. So, this government, during their previous time of administration, signed up to certain obligations. Those obligations have to be honored. You cannot just turn back and say, no, I didn't say so. No, I didn't agree with it. This is very clearly set out in all of the reports, that emanated from Sri Lanka's negotiations with the international community. And the failure of this administration has been the fact that they have been unable to bring to a conclusion, a finality to this issue. 2009, 18th of May, ever since the conclusion of the war, it gave the then administration a wonderful opportunity for a conclusion, for a finality to this issue, a finality based on friendship, brotherhood, devolution based on the 13th Amendment as it is implemented right now. But what did the government do? And what is this present government doing? When they go overseas, they talk of 13+. When they get on political stages here, they talk of 13-. This government has purposely embarked on racist policies, discriminatory policies, promoted pogroms, and thereby try to achieve the annihilation of various groups belonging to various ethnicities and religious persuasions. Now that is not civilized behavior. That is not the behavior of a developed nation state. We have to behave like a mature democracy. So far as basically the Samagi Jana Balawegaya will uphold Sri Lanka's unity, territorial integrity, sovereignty, political independence, and the unitary nature of our constitution. And within that unitary character, we shall ensure that there is no racism, no discrimination, no marginalization, absolutely no place for hate speech. It's not going to be a place for pogroms. It's not going to be a place for racial attacks or attacks based on religion. That is not true Buddhism. I'm a true Buddhist. I'm an authentic Buddhist. And I'm a practitioner of the noble utterances of Lord Buddha. And therefore, we will promote brotherhood, friendship, tranquility, live and let live, work together, come in togetherness, community feeling, no place for communalism, and we will promote nothing else other than Sri Lankanism. That is our motto.
And Mr. Premadasa, as a practicing true Buddhist, you'll have absolutely no problem in seeking the middle path and making all the communities happy. And there won't be any sort of speech alluding to the fact that somebody was elected by the majority Sinhalese people.
Of course, we will not engage in politics of discrimination, politics of hatred, politics of marginalization, politics of prejudice, politics of basically using one's own ethnicity, religion, caste, creed, or any other denomination for political advantage. We will ensure that we stand on policies, fact, work, performance, efficiency, efficaciousness. We will promote competition, fair competition, and we will allow the best and the brightest to play a major role in rejuvenating our motherland.
And Mr. Premadasa, as we come towards the end of this program, I have, perhaps you'll indulge me by giving me some sort of short answers, because we've only got a few minutes left. One question, these are a collection of questions that we've received from the public over the last few weeks. One question is, when, not if, but when you form a government, will you be looking at reversing the tax break given by President Gotabaya Rajapaksa and his administration when no sooner they came in, the 600 billion plus loss to revenue? Will you look at...
For us, you yourself know very well that when answering questions, you have to look at the contextual situation. There is absolutely no doubt we have to generate revenue. In generating revenue, there are various manners in which you can raise. There is the progressive system and there is the regressive system. Direct taxes, indirect taxes. Whether we like it or not, we have to have a far healthier position in terms of state revenue. But I cannot go into specifics without knowing the minutiae detail. And I have to be responsible. I'm going to accept the fact that revenue generation has to be done.
But Mr. Premadasa, at the beginning you said that this government made a big blunder, in short, of giving away 600 billion rupees, which this country can't afford.
Certainly.
So my question is, in that context, will you be looking at a program of reversing that decision?
Yeah. So the context in which that tax break was given is totally different to the economic environment that exists right now. I agree and I believe and I accept that greater revenue generation has to take place. But please understand, the inflation figures now and then are different. The unemployment figures now and then are different. The budget deficit figures now and then are different. The balance of payments figures now and then are different. The trade figures now and then are different. The macroeconomic indicators now and then are different. The economic multiplier that may take place because of tax breaks may be far restricted and far less now when compared with then. So I have to be a responsible leader. I cannot just go away throwing words or figures. All I can tell you is we have to strengthen our revenue sources. We cannot as a country function with state revenue being 9 to 10% of GDP. It has to be enhanced, it has to be elevated. Whether we take the progressive way, whether we are going to resort to regressive, actually the regressive taxing system is very unfair by the poor because it's not pay as you earn, it's a flat tax, and you have to look at the income elasticity of demand, the income elasticity of supply. So there are a lot of factors, a lot of economic scientific factors which one has to consider when giving specific answers. All I can tell you is there has to be enhancement of state revenue.
Last and final question. We've got like 2 minutes. What's your take on nepotism? This government is full of various members of one particular family and so on, and extended relatives and so on. It appears sometimes to be the bane of our society in Sri Lanka. So what's your take on nepotism?
I can assure you, in a SJB administration, we will not have nepotism, we will not have favoritism, we will not have individuals or groups who will be given special preferences. All I can tell you is the main litmus test for being a member of our administration would solely be delivery, results, performance, efficiency, achieving the national interest.
May I add words to your statement?
Sure.
Will you have a zero policy towards corruption?
As I said so, of course we would. And we would ensure that we will address corruption in a very developed, progressive and proactive manner, not confining it to slogans, because the slogans had its day and we know where it has led to. Not mere proclamations, declarations, various speeches or seminar deliveries or press conferences, not at all. We will have structural change that will lead to the establishment of institutions, strengthening of institutions that will have as its sole objective of eliminating and eradicating corruption, which has become a menace to our society.
Sajith Premadasa, it's been absolute delightful having you on Newsline, and so thank you very much. And on behalf of Team Newsline, and I suppose Team Newsfirst too, we wish you all the very best, especially because the people of Sri Lanka are seeking strong, effective and objective leadership. Thank you.
Last, I will always say that the wish of the Sri Lankan people will be my command.
Thank you. And that's the way it was on Newsline Special this evening. Take care, have a great evening ahead of you, and as always, God bless you all.